Have you ever wondered what it would be like if there were no cars on the road? It's a dream that every biker has thought of at some point. Sure, filtering through traffic is fun, but what if everyone was on a bike instead of a car? What would happen? That's what we're talking about in today's video. But before we do, I'd like to thank AutoSyst for sponsoring this video. AutoSyst is the best way to keep track of your bike's maintenance and service records. You fill up your virtual garage with an app on your phone, and you can then keep photos and records of everything your bike needs. It'll even notify you when you're due for an oil change or maintenance. It's available now for free on the App Store and has tons of really useful features. Even Ryan from F9 recommends it. Check it out in the link in the description below and go download it today. Now let's jump in. The first and most obvious change in a world that operates entirely through motorcycling would be in traffic patterns. Right now, our traffic is woefully inefficient. People transport themselves mostly in giant vehicles that can accommodate anywhere from 4 to 7 people, and these vehicles are utilized for only a small portion of their existence. They typically sit in a giant concrete structure for most of their lives, waiting to be used by us. Now, if everyone switched to a motorcycle, it wouldn't fix the issue of underutilization, and without getting into a sharing economy system, there's really no workaround for that in this video, and additionally, I don't want to delve into private ownership versus public utility model of transportation. We can get into that in a whole other video. So, in a world with only motorcycles, you have people moving through time and space on a vehicle that fits a single passenger, or 2 in case of a pillion. This would cause our traffic jams to reduce significantly simply because there's less space on the road being occupied by cars. Check this diagram. So now, we have way more space on roads. But would those roads look the same way they do now? We take it completely for granted, but our roads are completely designed around cars and to accommodate cars. Our parking spaces, road width, lanes, highway system, they're all designed with cars in mind. Would a motorcycle-dominated world have much skinnier lanes to accommodate bikes? Would we see 8 to 10 skinny bike lanes in the place of 2 to 3 car lanes we have now? I'm not sure. Motorcycles enjoy a super wide road in our current world due to car-centric culture and can split between vehicles. There might be something to be said about a sort of optimized car-to-bike ratio, but one thing's for sure. Roads would look very different in the US if it was a motorcycle-only world. Another place that would look very different and maybe even be unrecognizable would be the American home. American homes, at least in the unending suburban sprawl, are dominated by their garages, by the roads leading to them. Imagine a world where garages are either much smaller or possibly non-existent. You could just have a shed or maybe an awning that covers it from rain, hail, or weather, or a smaller garage to slide the bike into. If you're thinking this all sounds like India or Vietnam, you'd be right, and I'm gonna get to that. Another thing to think about is how our communities and services would look in this world. Things like drive-thrus would probably not exist, or if they did, they might be as rare as something like a drive-in theater. Because people wouldn't be able to normally carry around as many items as they do in a car. Would we build our cities around the motorcycle like we do for much of modern America? Would we have sidewalk parking and small decentralized parking locations? I'm not sure. One thing is for sure though, given how much garbage we aggregate and move around, bikes couldn't be the only vehicle on the road. We'd still need access to cars and trucks to move large items around our cities. It's hard to imagine a world where people conduct commerce with only bikes. How would we move bags of rice, airplane parts, or anything for that matter? The car would still have to exist in some capacity, but perhaps in this world, it plays second fiddle to basic human transportation to the motorcycle. That kind of throws out our small lane idea, because in this world, cars would still need to use existing roads to move goods and services. One thing that definitely would change, at least for office parks and residential areas, would be the parking lot. We could dramatically reduce parking lot space, which right now is a blight on human existence. So much of our usable space is dedicated to housing cars that just sit there all day long if you really think about it. It's completely impractical. If everyone rode a motorcycle, you could reduce parking spaces to 25% of what it is now or greater in some cases. However, one thing would increase substantially, and that's space to house gear. In this world that's completely fictional, everyone would own a helmet, jacket, boots, gloves, and etc. And ideally, this gear would take on its most cost-effective and economical shape. Imagine a Camry turning into a motorcycle gear. But then again, maybe not. The gear represents a blend of fashion and safety, so maybe you would see a world where gear is how cars are now, a symbol of status and place in the world, along with the bike itself. But getting back on topic, even though the parking lot space is reduced, you'd see a substantial increase in rooms devoted to housing gear. This is where I take the most fundamental issue with everyone riding motorcycles. It takes a special kind of crazy person to ride a bike every day and wear hot, heavy leather, helmets, and gloves and boots. Most humans are just sacks of meat who enjoy being as comfortable as possible in nice air-conditioned spaces, and I don't blame them. Another interesting thought, if this world did exist, you'd see motorcycles taking on the shapes of cars today. Even though we have specialization in motorcycles, it still remains a niche interest that, at least in the States, is largely considered a luxury good, a toy. If everyone used one as a tool, you'd see the motorcycle evolved into its most natural, cost-effective, and profit-maximized entity. Think of a motorcycle equivalent of a V6 Accord, for example. It would probably be something like a 500cc parallel twin with some upright ergonomics and creature comforts. A bike that has enough punch to fit in a spot in traffic, but not too much to scare you. Sports bike would definitely still exist and would likely enjoy the same sales/following that sports cars do now. Another important area to consider is the reduced cost to consumers due to motorcycle ownership. Bikes are inherently cheaper than cars. You could have one for $5,000 brand new, get some gear and get going. Consumers would have far more money in their pocket than that BMW they can barely afford. However, in a motorcycle-only world, I can guarantee you that people would spend as much as they can just to keep up appearances, since that's just the natural way of consumerism. But regardless, the savings would be greater than cars, particularly on road wear, where lighter weight bikes could save us a fortune in infrastructure costs and on our roads. And that's about it. What do you guys think of a world where bikes dominate the road rather than cars? Did I miss any changes? I know it's a really far-fetched idea, one in which, given human nature, would literally never come to pass. Everyone flying around on motorized two wheels? Unlikely. Oh wait, it happens every day in India and Vietnam. Oops. But an important consideration is the economics of it. Indians and Vietnamese people don't ride bikes because they want to necessarily, but because it makes more sense economically. A car is far out of the reach for most people, so they ride bikes out of necessity, typically without a motor in a lot of cases. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you think. This is just kind of a fun video I wanted to put together as a thought exercise. I'm Yammie Noob, and I hope you enjoyed.